Good evening. On behalf of Girl Geek Dinners and Southern California Public Radio, welcome to KPCC's Crawford Family Forum for tonight's program, Women in Technology and Media. And now, your moderator for this evening, Angie Chang.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for coming to the second Los Angeles Girl Geek Dinner. I don't want to get started without thanking Sophia Vicklin and Esther Nam one more time for their hard work and for KPCC for hosting this event. And now I'd like to turn it over to our panelists and have them introduce themselves. We have on our panel an entrepreneur who is on the cover of 17 magazine this month, and several other people. So why don't we get started?
Sure. So my name is Stacey Ferreira. I co-founded a company called mySocialCloud with my brother that stores usernames and passwords and allows you to log into everything that requires a username and password online. To give a little bit of background, I started the company with my brother when I was 18 and he was 20, right after I graduated high school. We moved not far from USC to start the company with another friend of ours who went to USC, who was getting a master's degree in security. And while we were there, we were able to link up with Richard Branson through a tweet. And we flew to Miami to meet him. And I guess 2 months later, he and Jerry Murdoch and Alex Welch all decided that they would invest in mySocialCloud, which was awesome, and kickstarted our business. We built a team, and fast forward 2 years later now, we just got acquired by a company called Reputation.com in the Bay Area. And I'm now working on a nonprofit called 2 Billion Under 20 that is helping all the 2 billion people on Earth who are 20 and under 20 to get started on their own ventures and give them the resources to do so.
Wow. That's very exciting. Well done. I feel like sort of the other end of the spectrum because I am way beyond 20. My name is Jan Sanders, and I have the privilege of being the Director of Libraries and Information Services for the City of Pasadena. I have always been involved with libraries, and it's been an interesting and challenging ride because I'm sure most of you have heard that e-books are in and real books are out, and so libraries are dead. And I'm here to dispel that myth and talk a little bit about how libraries are becoming ever more technological and how we're adapting and adjusting and doing what we've always done, which is essentially to put people and information together, but in very different formats and in very different ways. Whereas 30 years ago, we checked out artwork and vinyl records. Now we check out iPads and Kindles and everything in between. So it's an exciting field. I really enjoy librarianship. I've always been a librarian, and perhaps it's a little bit easier to enter that field than to enter the entrepreneurial field because we tend to have a lot of women in my field already. But having said that, often the good jobs and the technological jobs go to the men, so we need to overcome that and make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. But I'll talk to you more about the technological aspects of librarianship and what all that means, but just to say welcome and thank you for coming, and I'm delighted to be here and share the evening with you.
My name's Talulah Riley, and I'm an actress, mostly in British period drama, but also in more geeky productions like Doctor Who and Inception, and I'm moving into writing, and I'm an ambassador for the Prince's Trust.
My name is Alex Schaffert. I'm the digital media director here at KPCC. I started here 8 years ago. I was the sole web employee. And now things have changed. We have a large digital team, and we are not just producing audio, we're also producing a lot of content, cross-platform content. We have events in the forum. John alluded to this earlier. We're really trying to be a multi-platform news organization, and technology plays a huge role in that, and I hope to talk to you about that tonight.
So we're on this topic of getting more girls interested in STEM. I'm wondering who your role models are, girl geeks or boy geeks, and also what you are doing to advance girls in STEM.
I guess I'll start with that. So living in Silicon Valley now, I really look up to people like Marissa Mayer and Sheryl Sandberg and Meg Whitman, who are really doing a lot in the tech fields. They're kind of the traditional people that are always seen in media, but I think that that's great. And I think that we need more women that are doing awesome things in the eyes of the media and being portrayed through media so that other women can see that and say, I want to be like that.
So you're a good start being on the cover of 17 magazine.
I hope so.
That's great. I think in addition to that, too, it's important to sort of expand that a little bit, because STEM is more than just technology, as you know. It's science, technology, engineering, and math. And those are fields where we've always needed strong role models and strong women to step up and show girls exactly what can happen with that. The municipal government field is a good area for girls and young women to get into, because it is a little bit more accepting. For example, we have a very powerful woman here in the city of Pasadena who runs all the city's water and power, which is a very responsible position. She has more people under her direction than anybody else in the whole city, and is a very strong woman. So I think anytime we can talk to girls and young ladies about the importance of these fields and how you're just as good in analysis and just as good in numbers as you have always traditionally been in the social skills and letters and those kinds of things. Bill says he's not a numbers guy, so maybe there's a chance for one of the girls to step in and take his job.
My STEM role models, a lot of them are fictional. I really enjoyed Dana Scully from the X-Files growing up. And that really encouraged my interest in science. And now seeing sort of really great women in the field, like Lisa Randall, the theoretical physicist, and Gwen Shotwell, who's the president and CEO of SpaceX. Just a fantastic, wonderful human being. That they're really inspiring.
When Angie asked that question, I was thinking who my role models were when I was growing up. And honestly, I thought of Audrey Hepburn. And I thought of how relieved I was when I saw her in a movie where she played a library or a bookstore geek and philosophy geek, because I thought that was so much more attainable than being a princess. And yes, ended up getting a degree in philosophy. So I guess I was inspired by that. But I'm inspired by strong women who negotiate the world on their own terms. I don't always agree with Angela Merkel, but I admire her as a leader who does it on her own terms. She reminds me of my middle school French teacher, and she dresses like my middle school French teacher, but she's one of the most powerful women in the world, and I give her a lot of props for that.
So you guys have talked about your role models. I'm wondering, in your childhood, has there been figures or influences that helped shape you and guided you toward your girly geekdom?
Yeah, so I guess this isn't a girl example, but my dad has definitely been a huge influence in my life. When my brother and I were starting our business, and I guess I'll give a little background and an anecdote here too. When we saw the tweet from Richard Branson that said, "Meet me in Miami for intimate cocktails, donate $2,000 to charity," and then the next tweet gave an email address, my brother and I are broke college students at the time, and we're like, we don't have $4,000 for the two of us to go to Miami. And instead of my dad giving us the money to go, he sat us down and was like, I recognize that you guys need this money in 48 hours, but you have to work for everything that you get. So you're going to write me a business proposal that outlines why you need this money, where it's going, and how you plan to pay me back. And at the time, we were like, Dad, come on, like 48 hours isn't a lot of time. And he was like, no, like you work for what you get, and I'm going to make you work for this. And so we wrote that business proposal and sent it to him and got on a phone call with him the next day. And he was like, all right, I'll loan you guys the money. But again, another lesson in finances, you guys are going to pay me back in 3 months. And so I really admire now, looking back, that he did that for us and that he made us do that.
That's a great story. I guess there were a lot of women who sort of paved the way for me and sort of made things easier for me, and that may be why, sort of on the other side of the coin, I tend to do a lot of mentoring and try to talk to young women and assure them that they are talented and smart and have a lot of capacity that they may not even know about. But some women paved the way for me, and I think that gives us a responsibility to turn around and help the next one up with a hand up. So one of the most interesting women that I ever met, and a very inspiring person, was, well, now her name just went right out of my head. Helen Thomas. I had the privilege of meeting Helen Thomas because my daughter was working with her when she was an RA at George Washington University, and went to dinner with her, had drinks with her, chatted with her, and she's really a fascinating, fascinating woman. And the thing I took away from that is that you have to have your own standards and you have to just hold them up. Helen Thomas was very much her own woman and took nothing from anybody. So good for her. I found that very inspiring.
My sort of female role model growing up was definitely my mother. She was, or is, a brilliant entrepreneur. She's entirely self-made. She started her security company the same year that she gave birth to me. So she would be up ladders installing CCTV systems with me in the pram below. And she's a real door kicker. She can get anything done. And she was a great inspiration.
I remember reading about Marie Curie in my physics textbook, and I think growing up, the textbooks in school, they provide a little window of knowledge. For me, at least, that's how it was, and I think that's why it's so important that textbooks for kids don't just cover the material, but also give a little bit of background, and highlighting influential women is so important because that's really how I was first exposed to these women.
So you guys are all very influential women now, being on stage and identified as role models for everyone in the audience. I'm wondering if you can sell us on your career and kind of give us a day-to-day view of what it's like to be you.
Do you want the day-to-day of what it was like when I was running mySocialCloud or no?
Entrepreneur.
Okay, cool. So when my brother and I started mySocialCloud, we worked and lived out of a loft. So we would wake up every morning around 6 a.m. and get on our computers and kind of check all the social media and things that are happening in the space and see what's going on. And then we would sit down and our team would start to come in. So when we got acquired, we had a team of 10 people. And so our team would come in and we'd all sit down and go over, what's going to happen for the day. What are the things that we're working on this week and next month? And we'd all talk about it and discuss, typically, or some days people would just come in and start working, which was great. And we'd go over all the things and then just get down to work and honestly work for hours and hours and then be like, oh man, we forgot to eat lunch. And then we'd go grab lunch. And then we'd go back to the office and keep working away. So mySocialCloud at the end of the day is a security company. And so there were a lot of days where it was doing defensive things on our end. When we started getting a lot of press, we had a lot of people on forums typing like, oh, this is what we're doing to try and hack mySocialCloud. And so I would kind of scan those forums and be like, hey, just so you guys know, like this stuff is coming in and these are the things that people are saying online. And so a lot of what we did was on the defense. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to build a product and then be on the end of that and see people out in the world online talking about the product. And not only that, talking about how they're trying to hack into it, which for us was cool because it was like, this is kind of fun and exciting for us to real time see these kind of things come in and no one ever breached it. So it was fun for us.
So you had to feel pretty powerful that everything held up, right?
Yeah, it was fun. It was like, I know that's kind of weird to say. It's fun to have people try and hack into your stuff, but it was because it kind of tests you, and it's like are we in over our heads, or can we actually do this? And every time people failed to get into it, we were like, no, we're actually doing this. So it was cool.
Good job. Good job. I think to tell you a little bit about the day-to-day of what I do, I would just characterize it by saying most of my job is in trying to guess and to project what's going to be next and what we can do next. I mentioned earlier that a lot of people think libraries are sort of passé. Well, I have a building in this town that's 93,000 square feet and has 700,000 books in it, and if we don't need that anymore, what do we need the library for? So I have to think out there and project and think about, what if? What if we didn't have a solid collection? What if we didn't do this? What if we didn't do something else? So always thinking about, not today, but what's next, and what's the thing after that, and the thing after that, and talking to individuals and getting a feel from people like you about what your world is going to look like, and what you're going to need, and what is the way that the library can assist your life in moving forward. So a lot of what I do is interpersonal and is, fortune telling to a certain extent as well. But it's really a lot of fun. It's really fun.
The nice thing about being an actress is that you spend a lot of time resting between jobs. So that gives me time to pursue other interests. I'm studying for my degree in natural sciences and I'm writing. But when you're on location, it's a full day. You get up very early, spend a couple of hours in hair and makeup, frantically learn your lines last minute, and then spend the day shooting, which is really fun. You get a lunch hour, and at the end of the day, you're so tired, you go straight home to bed. Live theatre is a sort of an entirely different lifestyle because you become basically nocturnal. You do the evening show, and then you're so pumped with adrenaline afterwards that everyone has to go and sit in a bar for 3 hours and decompress. But yeah, it's also great fun.
I wanted to actually ask a bit about the Prince's Trust and what you're doing there.
Sure. So the Prince's Trust is His Royal Highness Prince Charles's youth charity for youth employment and encouraging young people into jobs, and provides funding for startups and things like that. So as an ambassador, the job is to raise awareness of the charity and then meet with the young people in their various ventures.
Like Jen, I try to think about the future, not the flying cars future, but the immediate future, 3 to 5 years out. There's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of change happening to cars, which is how many people consume radio right now. FM transmitters may not always be in the car dashboard. There are now other dashboards that are coming out. Some people don't even prefer not to use the dashboard and just plug in their phone or plug in another handheld device. So that's really what I think about with my team. I have the privilege of working with a wonderful team, and I try to help them come up with ideas that prepare us for that future. And if you want to, I can show you briefly what the future looks like for KPCC. We're working right now on a beta version of an iPad app, and I think that we can show you what it looks like, and I will try to hold the mic and navigate at the same time. So this is the latest build. We actually finished the version that I'm just about to show you today, and it's taking some time to load. I think we're having an issue. Looking at Jason to maybe help me out. That's the trick with technology, I guess. There we go. Something is happening. It took mercy on me. So just want to give you a brief sneak peek. This is really not public yet, but this is the start screen of the KPCC iPad app. In a nutshell, it's to give you a great listening experience and to also give you hand-picked news that you can quickly consume. So right now, the live stream is available from anywhere. Right now, Fresh Air is on. If I click down here, the live stream plays. I can listen to the live stream while I browse more news. I can click on here, and I can just quickly look at some local stories. I can click on read more, take a look at the story, go back. There is a section for all our programs. We brought up all the pictures of the hosts, which you rarely see, but sometimes perhaps imagine as you're listening to the programs. You can favorite certain shows. I like Her Talk, I like Fresh Air, I like Off Ramp, I like Radio Lab, I like Take Two. I can save my favorites. I go back in the navigation, and then I can quickly access all my favorites. The navigation is responsive. We have a video and photo section. Some people are surprised that KPCC is doing videos and photos, but we have two very talented videographers who are producing a lot of interesting visual content. I could be listening right now. At the same time, I can browse through some photos. So I'm showing you this because we're really trying to imagine what radio might look like and how it's going to be consumed in the future. And this is the latest version of what we're working on.
So this year, Sheryl Sandberg has been all over the news, as you guys probably know, with Lean In. So we've always been encouraging each other and asking each other, what is your Lean In moment?
Definitely. So I guess my Lean In moment was I was sitting in my NYU dorm room at the end of my freshman year. And at this point, my brother and I had already been running the business for about a year. And I was making the decision of whether to continue my college education or to leave it for the time being to run the business full time. And, as someone who at the time was a 19-year-old, looking back, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a decision, like go with the business. But at that point, I'm sitting in my dorm room. I'm like, I won't graduate with all my friends. I'm not going to have the traditional life that everyone has. My life is going to be very different if I decide to kind of take that leap of faith and put everything into my business. But I did, and I feel like that was the best decision that I could have made looking back, and it was definitely a big lean-in moment for me.
I guess my lean-in moment is a lot less dramatic, but probably most of yours is a little less dramatic as well. But it was, I remember this fairly clearly, actually. I was a young professional, and I had been involved with a number of projects, and I was working on a number of things, and it suddenly occurred to me that the people who were leading the projects and the people who were giving me advice were not as clever about what was going on as I was. So, and that's not an ego statement, it was just a statement of fact. And so I thought, well, why are you taking orders and suggestions from other people? Why don't you step up and be the leader and make the decisions and get on with it? So that's what I did.
My lean-in moment's quite similar to Stacey's, I think. I had been offered a job, an acting job on the movie Pride and Prejudice, and it started filming the day after I finished my A-levels at high school, and I had to make the decision whether to pursue acting as a career or take the more traditional route and head off with all my contemporaries and do the university thing. And I was at quite an academic school, and my brilliant mother, who'd worked so hard to get me this excellent education, was really keen that I go to university. But I decided to go ahead and pursue acting, and looking back, I think not taking that standard route, but opening myself up to the other really helped me live the kind of life that I wanted to lead.
I didn't really have a lean-in moment. I feel I've been leaning in my entire life. And I think that a lot of women in the audience may feel similarly. My reaction to and there's a lot that could be said about this, but to Sheryl Sandberg's book was that, I just had a baby. He's now 5 months old. And this is a great time for everybody else to lean in. So I want my husband to lean in. And my team has leaned in. They have done a great job while I was on maternity leave. The company has leaned in by giving me the opportunity to be on maternity leave, even though it could have been longer. I think society at large should be leaning in and make it possible for women to balance career and family a little bit more easily. So my reaction to it is, how about everybody else lean in for a change?
Cool. So last two questions for the night before we turn the microphone over to the audience would be, is that one piece of advice to your younger self? And I know that probably is drop out of school now, and also, what is your advice for women to network better? As you know, Girl Geek Dinners is a networking event, but at the same time, oftentimes as women, we're shyer and more hesitant to go out. So what is that one tip you give women to go to networking events and succeed?
Definitely. So I guess I'll answer the first one first. I wish that I had, and this is going to sound weird, I wish that I had learned how to learn earlier. So I feel like my parents did an awesome thing, which was send me to an all-girls Catholic private high school. It was a choice of mine, but it was hard, again, to leave all my friends in public school at the time. And they gave me this opportunity to go to a school and learn at kind of an education that I felt would be better than the public school one. And at the time, I was viewing life in the sense of, I need to go to high school, I need to get all A's. From there, I'll go to college, I'll get all A's, and then I'll get a job. And so I wasn't really focused on finding my passions and learning. I was focused on going through school and getting the grades I needed to get into college. And so I wish, had I done it over again, I would have spent that time picking out the things in the curriculum that I actually loved and pursuing those more and researching more about those and learning more about those at an earlier age, rather than, I feel like, just starting that now in the past couple of years.
I think I would have taken more risks and taken them a little earlier in my career. But I want to talk a little bit about networking, because you asked a question about that as well. And I do a lot of networking, and what I have found to be helpful is to just come up with one or two really good questions, and then as you meet people, pose those questions. Why are you here tonight? What do you think the program is going to be about? What excites you about the field of technology? A couple of really good questions that you ask, and then be quiet. Because most people like to talk about themselves. And even individuals who are shy, if you ask a thoughtful question, will enter into a conversation. So that's my advice for work in a room.
I'm kind of at a disadvantage networking, being English. It's not our forte. We tend to be quite reserved, but I guess have a couple of glasses of wine and get talking.
Never a bad idea.
Yeah, I think possibly be the contact that you would like to meet. So, if you are that person that can introduce people to others and has exciting things to say and answers email promptly and all those sorts of things, you're more likely to be sought out by the people that you meet. And what was the first question?
Lesson for your younger self?
Younger self. I think probably don't wish it away. I spend so much time in my life, saying, I'm going to do this and it's going to be great when I'm X, Y, Z, and sort of forget to enjoy it. And I'm 28 today, and I'm feeling quite old. So
That's so cute. That's so cute.
but yeah, I think sort of enjoy the moment.
Yeah, I don't play it safe. I think that the risk-taking is a very good advice, because when you're younger, there is a little bit less at stake, and you can pick up, you can change continents, you can try out a crazy idea, you can, shoot for the stars and go for the first dream. Don't take second best, don't do the safe choice. That's my advice. And in terms of networking, I think quality beats quantity. You don't have to talk to 10 people. You have to have good conversations with 1 or 2 people, and those are conversations that are going to be memorable for you and memorable for them. And I think that's more important than just taking a business card from everybody, even though I handed out my business card earlier. And I don't know when there's a good time to make this pitch, but networking brings me to the topic of I need to find some programmers for KPCC. So please, I'm going to tweet out the link to our jobs page. We're looking for programmers and for mobile producers and all kinds of other jobs. So here's my networking. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for answering my questions. Now we're going to turn it over to the audience. We have a microphone or 2 floating around if you want to raise your hand and ask a question. Back there.
Okay, I wasn't expecting to go first because this question is going to take a little bit of nerve. So I've recently been reading a book about optimizing as a woman, particularly in regards to your cycle. And the idea was that women have a more cyclical nature, and that there's going to be weeks in which you're much more dynamic and weeks in which you're much more reclusive. Now, I work with a team of 7 guys, and I feel like I go through much more variability in like who I am and who I'm being and the way I'm being at the moment. I'd like to ask you guys if you've ever experienced that, and if you've noticed that that's an observation that's more true or more false.
I guess I'll take that first. So I worked on a team of 10 of us. I was the only girl. And so I kind of resonate with what you're saying there. And yeah, like there are times where, I don't know, emotionally you're kind of on this roller coaster because everything's happening. And sometimes I feel like the guys on the team were just like, it's chill. And I kind of had to learn to be like that and be like, learn a lesson. I think, there's a lot that we can learn. I think there's a lot that guys can learn from girls and a lot that girls can learn from guys. And maybe it's not even a gender thing, but me personally, a lot of times I feel like I was, doing a startup is kind of up and down all the time. But there were times where I had to kind of take myself back and be like, no, like everything's okay. I'm just having a moment. And so you kind of have to remove yourself and then go back into it and be like, everything's good and we're gonna do this and I'm gonna get over my thing. So.
Well, maybe women are more cyclical, but that doesn't excuse men from being moody from time to time as well. Let's be clear on that one.
I think it's probably an individual thing. I mean, there are certainly differences between men and women, and anyone who thinks there isn't looking closely. But I don't know about the cyclical nature of women. I'm very. I'd like to think I'm pretty steady.
I don't know what to say. I don't know. Are you asking about raging PMS? Because yes, I have that sometimes. But I think everybody who's up here were pros, and I'm sure that men have other hormonal issues to contend with, and I think as long as we're obviously focused on having a respectful team environment, and that includes cutting people some slack every once in a while, I think we're good.
Next question, I saw a hand over here.
Yes, my question is that I consult and coach a lot of women in startups with Launch America group that I have. And what I would like to ask the panelists is, other than the technology for young women, what is your recommendation that women can develop that power? You talk about power. So other than the technical side, which is you can get from your skills and your education, what brings it out in you that you're able to stand up for yourself, you're able to speak up, somehow you step out there, and each of you have done something that separates you. what can you pass on to other women, young girls, that they can pick up this skill set? And I don't know if it's a skill set or it's an emotional or a psychological trait, but what advice would you give to other young women?
Just start doing it. Just do it once. Take that step of faith like you talked about. Take one step the first time, and the next one's easier and easier and easier, and you build your own confidence. I just came back from a mentoring experience, and I had a number of girls, young women, on my team, and we were talking about how to get ahead and to not always worry about consensus and not always try to be the nice one and make it all work. And my advice to them was just gut up and do it. Just take a deep breath if you know you're right and you feel strongly about it, and do it. That's how you learn it. You do it.
And I would add to that, own who you are as a woman. And don't try to hide an aspect of your personality because you think it's not appropriate or not wanted in the workplace. My advice is don't try to be one of the boys. Be a girl all the way and own it and be happy about it. And your professional work will only it will only gain from showing also other sides of you as a girl or as a woman.
I think I'll kind of piggyback off of what you said in terms of just go out there and do it. It's kind of like learning to play an instrument for the first time, right? You're going to pick it up, and as long as you have confidence and just start trying to play the instrument, eventually you're going to learn. And you might not do everything right the first time, but if you stick with it, you're going to get there.
And I think surround yourself with people who can provide accurate feedback as well, and be a good support network. Events like this, family, close friends, people who can encourage you and support you, and also, tell you when something isn't happening.
I also want to chime in and say that this coaching that you're broaching, coaching of young girls and women to become who they eventually will become, I think all of us can do it as peers as well. Like afterwards in networking, we can like egg each other on and paint a picture that the other person can't see yet of their future, and really like create that vision for greatness that we can give each other. So any more questions?
Hi, I'm David. Haley very kindly suggested that she hold the mic for me. Thank you. So I've just written the pilot of a comic book with my partner, and I was talking with a friend, and I realized it didn't pass the Bechdel test, and I was so disappointed in myself. And so I'm now taking a second look at this comic and thinking, I'm writing a story that young people are going to read. I want to make a positive impact on the world. And I'd like to ask you and anyone else in the room who's willing to provide feedback, what kind of female characters would you like to see in media, and what kind of roles in plot or characteristics do you wish more female characters in media had? I would love to write them.
And Bechdel is Alison Bechdel of Fun Home. Is that the Bechdel test?
I'm only familiar with the nature of the test. I apologize.
And what's the test?
So the test is, in film, if two female characters talk to each other for at least a minute about something other than a man. It's a very basic level of significance for females to a story, and I think it's very important, and I want to do a better job.
I'd really like to see, and this probably doesn't work given the visual medium of a comic, but I'd like to see plain women portrayed more in the media. I get so many scripts sent to me where it says, so and so is a nuclear physicist, and she's the hottest badass you have ever seen, and wears thigh-high boots and can kick any. And at this point, I understand, making the point that women can be women, but I think it's gone so far now that I'd really like to see somebody normal looking, doing a great thing in a comic.
I have a quick question. If You obviously all have worked very hard in your careers and have become very successful. And I'm wondering if you have any stories or moments where you've worked really hard and for whatever reason didn't get the recognition for your work, and how you've dealt with that and how you make sure that you're standing out and you're being recognized for what you're doing.
That's sort of an actor's life constantly, is dealing with rejection. So you just have to accept it, because you go out on numerous auditions, and there's intense competition, and you're going to get very, very few of the roles you go up for. And I think just sort of you just take the beating, and you take it, and then you don't notice it.
I think it's also important to recognize when you've reached the point in your career where it's your job to recognize others. Where the spotlight may not always be on you, but it's then your job to make members of your team feel good and accomplished, and call them out and give them the kudos. And that's really a great experience once that happens.
Yes. There are a lot of times that I can think of that in entrepreneurship when you're trying to get funding for a security startup as an 18-year-old. It's not easy. You get a lot of people saying, like, you haven't been alive long enough to know what you're talking about. And so I think, the lesson is just keep going after it and keep doing it if it's something you're really passionate about, and eventually you'll find a way.
So I think in short, that means everyone up here is the people that you see that they didn't give up. So persistence is key.
You can't give up.
Hi. I read something that really shocked me recently, so I'd like to share it with you. There was a global study done of the performance of 15-year-olds in STEM subjects. And in 65 countries, girls at the age of 15 outperform boys. Yay. However, in the US, they didn't. 65 countries, girls doing better than boys, the US not. So the question is, how does that arise? Is it a cultural failure? Is it an educational failure? Any ideas that you have, and how do we stop that? Because obviously, if something is happening on that level, it has a severe impact on the introduction of girls into those subjects.
I would say the answer is yes and yes. Yes, it is cultural, and yes, it is social, and yes, it is everything in between. And it starts, you've read the materials, you know as much as I do about it. It starts very, very young when you walk down the toy aisle, and everything in the girls' aisle is pink and purple and soft, and everything in the boys' aisle looks like fun. So, there's that. And I think it starts with events just like this. When women get together and encourage each other and share problems and issues and successes, that spills over, and little girls hear that, and they talk about that. And I think it's really important. We're seeing some real changes in children's literature. I started out as a children's librarian. Yes, the role models are changing, the pictures are changing. It's slow, and it's unfortunately, it's not necessarily welcome everywhere. That change is not necessarily welcome everywhere. So it's a bit of an uphill struggle as well.
Definitely. I would kind of go off of that too and say that when I was in actually 6th grade, my brother started playing computer games, and I saw him playing the games, and I really wanted to play them. And I was like, Scott, will you let me play the computer games? And so I started playing them, and then I would once I got into middle school, and be talking to my friends, these computer games are really cool. Will you play them with me? And all my friends were like, no, boys do that. And I was like, I like playing them, so you should play them with me. But then that got reconfirmed when I got into high school, and I got more interested in how can I build my own world online. And I got to high school, and I was looking through the course, and I was like, okay, where are all the programming things? I want to learn how to build my own online world. And there was only one class in my high school that was something like basic HTML. And so I took that class, and after my freshman year, there were no other classes for me to continue that. And now I'm really proud to say there are some teachers at my high school that are implementing those classes that I wish I had. But it was something where I had all along been told that that's not something that girls do, and then that was kind of reconfirmed when I got to high school, and there weren't the courses that I wanted to take, but then the boys' school across the street had them. So
I think it's really encouraging. We have toys, engineering toys like Goldie Blocks in Toys R Us stores, beginning to change that wave of pink and blue toys. There's also lots of MOOCs online, Coursera, and a lot of Udacity programs that are allowing girls everywhere to learn computer science if their local school doesn't carry it. I think we have time for one more quick question in the front here.
What are we doing to change the men's mentality of what women can do?
I think opening up the conversation with them. I think that books like Lean In have been great, and then not only just reading the book yourself, but having a larger conversation with the men that are in your lives and talking to them about the issues is a great way to get started.
We start by not caring about man's mentality. we just do what we want to do, and we care less about what people think about us.
Cool. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to all our Girl Geek panelists. And I would like to introduce our last speaker of the night, Andy from Innovate Pasadena.
It's great to be here. I'm Andy Wilson, and I'm the founder and co-chair of Innovate Pasadena. I run a software company. And I remember when Sophia approached me and said, Andy, would you like to come speak at the Girls Geek Dinner? I said, Sophia, I have a problem, at least one problem. I'm not a girl. And she looked over at me, she said, but you are a geek. So I'm going to maybe share a few comments about my story of geekdom. And one thing I'm extremely passionate about is networking, right? And my story is really one about somebody who is interested in geeky things. And by geeky things, we had an Apple II Plus when I was a kid. I had a tape drive. I was telling people outside. That was a long time ago. I played. I didn't play Magic cards. I played Dungeons and Dragons. Right. I did all these really geeky things, and I started thinking about what I was going to do when I grew up. And my dad was a very well-educated economist from Harvard, and I think he always was a man of thoughts, and he wanted me to build things. And so, guess what? When I went to Dartmouth, I studied engineering because my dad always wanted to be an engineer. And nothing like a geek to do engineering, right? We love that stuff. And so I went off to college and studied engineering and continued to pursue my geekly passions, right? Got out of college, and it was surprising. I think about engineering, and you think about mechanics, right, and electrical engineering, and what you realize what it's about is building things. Right, and I think about my life is I can't even remember the last equation I did, but I've dedicated my life to building things, right? So I'm thinking about as an engineer how we build more and better things, right? And so I'm constantly challenging myself, and so got my first job out of college on a consulting firm, and that was interesting. It was a British-based consulting firm. They all spoke like you. They seemed smarter because they had that cool accent. And what I realized in consulting is that it was about the world of ideas, right? And it was great training, but that passion to build something was still there. So I ended up going to business school and thinking about a transition. And people always ask me, should I go to business school? And I said, if you're doing exactly what you're doing, don't go to business school. Keep doing what you're doing. Okay, don't waste your time. Pursue your passions. So I went to business school so I get back to the world of doing things. And I ended up, when I graduated from business school, moving to Chicago, and I joined a company called R.R. Donnelley & Sons, and they're the world's largest printing company. And for those people who are in media, imagine joining a printing company in the mid-90s, right? Think about digital transformation in an industry. And I, of course, wanted to go produce something, engineer, build stuff. So here I show up in the world of printing in the mid-90s thinking that I'm going to produce things, and I got to run some manufacturing plants. And I just remember walking through those plants. And we always say, I love the smell of fresh ink in the morning. And for those of you who didn't, remember Robert Duvall in Platoon, that's an old reference. Anyway, I love producing that stuff. And what happened is I was in those printing plants, and technology was going through was transforming those industries. And I was at the front line of it. And I thought I was there just to make stuff. And what I realized is the people who'd been in printing, and by the way, printing is the second oldest profession, I understand, they were the least open to change, these old timers. And I think I heard a line up here, I think, Stacey, from you, is that I had people who worked for me who were, had been in the printing business longer than I was old, and they always reminded me of that. Son, I've been printing longer than you were born. Anyway, I got sucked into technology, right? Suddenly I was no longer producing stuff, and I became a technologist. And which is always like, life, you have your life plan and then it happens. So suddenly I'm in technology, and that further kind of accentuates my view of the power of ideas in technology to do new things, right? So we can now transform digital information, distribute it, and all those things. So I was on the front line of that. And I still believed at that time that ideas and technology in kind of engineering was the solution, and that's all we needed. Right? And so I'm thinking, build it and they shall come. Well, then I got into the world of entrepreneurship, right? So I left the printing business, and I remember that's a story for another day, but I kind of realized when you're 29 years old to be in the printing business is probably not a good career choice. So I went out and joined a startup company that was funded by Ira Donnelly, and that was my first startup. And that was an amazing experience in the sense that 5 years later, we had built a company that we took public on the NASDAQ, right? And what was interesting about that, for those of you who are interested in startups, is that it was corporate sponsored, right? And so I know we have some entrepreneurs here. And if you're in the entrepreneurial world and you're not corporate sponsored, half of your brain is thinking about how you're going to make payroll and where the money's going to come from. Okay, when you have corporate sponsorship, you're like, hey, I'm doing a startup. You're only doing half of a startup, right? Because you don't have to worry about funding. Needless to say, I started looking in those startup environments and trying to see what made these companies succeed, right? So anyway, I was in this business, and we took it public, and then the internet bubble, the first wave of 1.0 came up, and I joined a company out of Idea Lab here in Pasadena called Overture Services. And we were fortunate, we ended up selling it to Yahoo for a couple $2 billion. And I ended up starting up a technology incubator with some business school buddies, and we were involved in 15 startup companies. And they're all built around intellectual property, patents, they were kind of engineering driven. And after spending time with these companies, I started thinking to myself, well, all great ideas, but some did better than others. And I tried to look at what the pattern was. And this is an engineering view of the world, like what's going on here? And what I realized, the companies that succeeded were the ones that engaged people around them, social capital, human capital, to succeed. Okay, because as an entrepreneur, you are the least leverage, or you have the least amount of resources and you have the most to do, right? So I started thinking to myself, if you're gonna make big ideas succeed, you must leverage them with network, community, and relationships. If you'd asked me 30 years ago or 40 years ago if network was important to success, I'd say, no, it's IQ, it's hard work, it's engineering, it's education. And here I am at this nirvana moment. I'm saying, if we all want to succeed, we must think about how we leverage others for success. Okay, so as a geek, I'm only saying, oh my goodness, we must network. We must have relationships, right? And so in the last 5 years of my life, I've left the venture capital world and done two things. I got to translate those things to action, right? One is I started a company called Rexter, which is about engaging your relationships systematically. So LinkedIn's about connections, right? And Salesforce, if you use a CRM system, it's about managing deals. But if you need to build relationships to get deals done, that's up to you. There is no tool to do that, right? How do I take a social network, those people I know, develop them and engage them to get things done? And getting things done could be starting a company. It could be selling something. And we struggle. We struggle. Our minds are so overwhelmed. It's no longer the hundreds or thousands of contacts I have. It's how I put those to work. Right? How do I develop those contacts and relationships? There is no tool for that. I've dedicated myself the last 3 years of my life, much of my wives and our investment, our kids' school money, to try to make this reality. right? Why is that? Because I think this is so important to translating ideas into outcomes, right? So that's software. What software must also be augmented by in person, the reality of what we do every day, the people we see. And what I'm doing at Innovate Pasadena, and frankly what we're doing here tonight, is translating the need to build community and relationships to get great things done, right? So it's nice that we have engineers, it's nice that they're women engineers, but how do we put them together? How do we create relationships, teams, community to do amazing things, okay? So that is about what we're doing at Innovate Pasadena in terms of connecting Caltech, Art Center, JPL, 30 CEOs of local companies so we can leverage each other to create more and high quality outcomes, right? Change, make an impact, right? And by the way, when you make impact, you're gonna make money, but more importantly, I think as you start getting to middle age, my wife told me I'm middle age, that you start thinking about what are we doing to make this a better place, right? And so I think one of the things that I've said is what I think is this realization of the power of network relationship community is so important and so under kind of realized and so under instrumented that what I'm doing in software, what I'm doing at Innovate Pasadena, and what I'm doing here tonight is carrying a message of networking is, yeah, it's fun, it should be fun, right? You get to meet interesting people, but it's a critical resource in making your ideas reality, right? So if you're a geeky nerd like me, you're like, gosh, I'd rather be working on my idea. But if you're really committed to turning that idea into something powerful, I challenge you to go out there and think about who in the universe, who in the community do you need to reach out to and embrace to make that reality more than just you, right? Make it something significant. How do you force multiply yourself, right? With the people you know, the people who can help, and the people who can help you, that idea to become something meaningful. So I congratulate Girls Geek Dinner for taking an idea, creating a movement, right? That's important. That's entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship. And how do we take that idea, propagate it ourselves, make events like this a forum to connect with those who can help us achieve our own goals, and we can help them. So that's all I can add. I'm not a woman, but I'm a geek, and I understand the power of networking, and I encourage you with that to go out and make some relationships, enlist people in your own personal missions, right? Create platforms, and social media is great, but I also think these in-person events are really an important part of that ingredient, right? It's nice to connect, but I really need to look at you in the eye, see if there's a chemistry, see if we share common interest, mutual respect to help each other, right? So networking is not just a dirty word, right? It's something that is a critical resource in driving your personal success. So I challenge you to think about how you incorporate that in your own personal plan, okay? Your own personal plan. If you have ideas and you have dreams, I think a network is going to help you translate that into reality. So anyway, thank you for having me. Thank you for a great panel. Thank you, Sophia. I think there's some wrap up, so I probably went too far. But anyway, it's been a real pleasure. I'm glad to be a part of this. Thank you, KPCC.
So thank you, Andy Wilson. Once again, just a round of applause for the panel this evening. I always forget about the light. So thank you to our online audience for coming out. We are now going to have an hour of networking and hanging out where if you were here in person, you'd be able to experience. We do 120 events at KPCC during the year. Come on out. Thank you, everybody. Please stick around, network, talk to each other. I think that's one of the most valuable aspects of the in-person programs we do here is the opportunity for you all to talk to each other. I'm sure our panelists will be available as well. Thank you for coming. Good night.